Parker, and I hope my true story interests you. I had difficulty coming up with 30 minutes, so I'm going to make this short, sweet, and to the point. When I was in grade school, we were given the opportunity to stand at the front of the class and say, the title of my story is, and off we'd go into the wild blue yonder with a familiar tale or one we'd made up. Title of my story is Sticks and Stones. Now you've all heard the lie, sticks and stones, they break my bones, but words can never harm me. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Words hurt. Unfortunately, we sometimes remember the unkind, humiliating words a lot longer than the positive, affirming ones. Well, today, you'll hear me share, for the first time really, my true story. You know how younger kids can be disarmingly frank? If you don't want them to say it, don't ask them. Well, in grade school, the most handsome boy in the class sat in front of me. One day, he turned around and faced me, and he said, "You've got some big lips." Not in a smooching, not in a complimentary way, like, "You've got some big lips." The derogatory way he said it hit me in the pit of my stomach. You say, "You were in grade school, why did it hurt you? Didn't you know, girl, you had big lips?" Well, no one had focused on my lip size before. No one had humiliated me like that. Well, I could have gone to my Little Red Riding Hood and Wolf Days and said, "Better to kiss you with, my dear." I could have said that, but I didn't. You know how you think of what you should have said an hour, a week, a year, a lot later? Well, I wasn't one with the fast comeback remark. Unfortunately, I never told my big sister, I didn't tell my mom, I didn't tell my teacher, I didn't tell anyone. I just let that soak in. Sadly, I let this classmate define me. So, whenever I heard the negative description, even if it wasn't directed toward me, bubble lip, soup coolers, my ears perked up and my self-esteem went down. What did I do? I pursed my lips so they didn't look so big. Well, that only brought more attention to my lip size. And nobody asked me, "Why are you doing that?" Then there was a relative in Faison, of all places, who enjoyed saying almost every cotton-picking time she saw me, "You got the straightest, skinniest legs." So, what did old low self-esteem Maie do? This girl wore long knee socks, even in the summertime, working in the backer. Once again, I let somebody else define me. Now I could have said, "You can't talk with your raggedy baseball-shaped legs." I could have, but I didn't. Then there's the coworker, it wasn't Lee, who looked at my hands one day and said, "Girl, you got some big knuckles for a female." Now, I could have said like the wolf, "Bigger to knock you out with, my dear." I could have, but I didn't. So I have big knuckles. My daddy had big knuckles. My hands are like his. And I don't plan to do any commercials for rings or for hand lotion. Here's another one. There's the school talent show. I planned to lead a popular song and even had my backup girls. While practicing before the show, in comes Mary J. Blige, not the real Mary J. She kept telling me over and over, You can't sing that song, Suge. You don't have the voice for it. So I didn't lead the song. I just sat in the audience. What I should have said was, girl, don't think that a song hasn't been sung until you sing it. Now, if there are any of you out there who think you're all that in a bag of chips because you can sing a little bit, no, it ain't about that. Listen. Great is thy faithfulness, O Lord my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Do you think I could have sung it at the talent show? Okay. Didn't even have backup. I sang it with no music. What is that called when you sing with no music? Acapella. Okay. Now, I mentioned earlier how kids can be terribly honest and harsh at times. Well, as I told you, adults can be insensitive too. I was skinny most of my life. She can probably attest to that if she remembers way back in. I was skinny. You know how some girls have a figure 8? Well, I was a 1, straight up and down. Well, one day at the high school, I was walking at one end of the hallway, and I heard a coworker at the opposite end of the hallway, and she was talking to someone about me. She said, "She looks like olive oil." Now, for some of you who are not that old, olive oil was Popeye's girlfriend. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Whoop, whoop. You remember. Well, I got picked at a lot because of my big eyes, so that made me think about Popeye too. Well, big eyes is a family trait. My mother's side of the family, they all have big eyes. But back to this unkind coworker. Well, when she discovered that I'd heard what she said, she put her hand over her mouth and she scooted down the hallway. Again, it wasn't Lee. Well, the bad part was not knowing why I'd been criticized. Not one word did she say. Now, I could have said, "Now you can't talk with your cantaloupe-shaped head." I could have, but I didn't. Now, I'm sure by now you've discovered that sometimes I just didn't look at myself in the mirror. You may ask, well, aren't you aware of your physical features? Well, as I got older, I learned that my parents' genetics make me look the way I do. So remember not to make fun of folks. As adults, you can do that sometimes. Don't humiliate others. Don't be demeaning, because like with me, careless comments can stick with a person a very long time. Now, today I can laugh at myself. I can laugh at what used to hurt. I can forgive others. I have forgiven them for what they've said to me and about me. And I've actually been strengthened at times by intentionally hurtful comments. I accept who I am, what I look like. I am chosen. I am precious. And I encourage myself in the Lord. Remember, all of you, you are beautiful. And don't let anybody define you by your looks. When God made you, He knew exactly what He was doing. Don't think you're smarter than He is. Not for a second. And remember, God made me, and He don't make no junk. Thank you.
Coming up next on today's episode of Storytelling,
turned me into a cat and my little sister into a mouse. And there she goes.
Most aging adults want to stay in their homes as long as possible. And as your loved ones get older, you want to support them, even when you can't be there. Star is proud to offer Star Alert. This new system is now mobile and has GPS compatibility, so your loved ones can live their lives and you can have peace of mind, knowing they can get the help they need with just the simple push of a button. The new Star Alert also offers automatic fall detection, so help will be alerted even if they can't press the button. Call and ask about Star Alert today.
Eastern North Carolina is a beautiful place where we gladly choose to call home. And we strive to provide the best communications services. STAR is committed to improving communications to all our service areas because we want to improve the communities where we not only work, but also live. STAR Communications. We are neighbors serving neighbors.
Tell my story for you today. Jack, the cat, and the mouse. And this story, I've got to give you a little bit of background for it first because I want you to understand the Jack tale. So when the English, the Scots, and the Irish were coming to America, mostly because they were all starving, they come over here and they first land in the coast. Well, in the 1700s, much of that property had already been taken. So they start moving farther and farther west. And as they do that, they bring with them not just themselves, they bring their culture too, their food, their language, their traditions, their religion, and they brought Jack. And when Jack came, Jack is the same Jack they had in England. And this Jack is young, he's sturdy, he's poor as dirt, he's not very well supported, but he's kind and he's got a positive attitude. So this is the Jack you will meet today. The reason that we have these Jack tales is because these people who landed in this small triangle area of western North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, and southwest Virginia, pass these stories on orally from generation to generation. As the children are sitting on the front porch, shelling lima beans, their mamas are telling them stories to keep them shelling those lima beans. So this is the Jack we have, and particularly from Beech Mountain, North Carolina. And they were kind of rediscovered during the Depression. And at that point, Jack became a national hero because they realized that Jack is just what they needed to send out during the Depression with this positive attitude that he had, the I can do, the poor boy who makes it. So let's go with our story, Jack, the cat, and the mouse. Well, Jack lived on his farm, this rocky old poor dirt farm, with his ma, his pa, and his two older brothers, Tom and Will. They didn't like Jack so much, but one day, Pa gets them three boys together. And he said to them, you know what? Your ma and I getting old. We're tired of farming this old rocky place. Tell you what, I'm going to give each of you boys $100. Ooh, their eyes light up. They weren't expecting this. I'm going to give each of you $100, and then I want you to go out into the world And the one who makes the most of that $100, I'm giving you the farm. Whoa, be dads, thinks Jack. So them three boys get together, a couple of ham biscuits and a few apples, stick them in their pockets. And that next morning, off the three of them go down that road. Well, they're going down the road, and little did Jack know that Tom and Will done made a plan the night before. So they run on ahead of Jack, and Jack couldn't find them nowheres, but they run on ahead, and there were some real thick bushes and briars in there. Them boys hid behind those bushes. Jack's coming on down the road, just whistling, looking around. He's got $100 in his pocket. He's going on down that road when all of a sudden that Tom and Will jump out from them bushes. They beat Jack up. They're hard on that boy. And they leave him there in a mud puddle, but before they go, they take that $100 from Jack's pocket. Well, after a while, Jack comes to himself and reaches in that pocket. Be dads, they took my $100. But I can't go back home. Pa sent me out. I'll just make my way in the world and do the best I can. Well, off he goes down the road. And after a while, he gets to a fork in the road. Looks around, thinks, well, now, which way am I going? Do I go right or left? He couldn't decide. He said, I know what I'll do. I'll throw my hat up in the air, and whichever way the front of my hat lands, that's the direction I'm going. So Jack takes his hat off, throws it up in the air, and it comes down to the ground. And the front of that hat, wouldn't you know it, is pointing exactly down the middle. Well, Jack's not to be put off, so he looks at that and he says, well, I think I'll go that way. So he goes on down the road, and he's going for a long time. And when I say road, it's more of a dirt path. And he's going on down that path, and it starts to narrow up, and he's looking around, and it's getting more scrubby, and there are briars and grass all around. It's hard walking down that path. So he's real tired and hungry. And after a while, he looks, and he sees a big old house. I mean, a big, beautiful house. And he looks down that road, and he thinks, oh, I bet a rich man lives there. I think I'm going to go up to his house, see if he can give me some food, maybe let me spend the night. And then he looks down and he says, oh, I'm so full of patches and muddy, I can't go up there. But he was real hungry, so he makes his way on up. Well, when he is looking around now, he notices he sees the pastures in there. There ain't no cows in them pastures. There ain't no horses, no pigs, nothing. And this big white house, well, looks looking a little shabby. Looks like them rails have fallen off the fences. Maybe this ain't such a nice place after all, but he gets up there, he hollers out, hey, anybody there? Nothing. So Jack sees that bell on the front porch. He pulls that bell, and sure enough, the door opens. Jack looks down. There's a big cat standing there. That's all. He peeks in. All he sees is that big cat. And so waits for somebody to come. Nobody comes. So he says that. He just said, anybody in there? Who runs this house? The cat says, me and the mouse. What be dads? I done come to a country where cats talk. She said, well, I ain't always been a cat, you know. She said, a witch come round here, took most of my family away, turned me into a cat and my little sister into a mouse. And there she goes. And she said, then that cat said, and tonight she's a coming back. And turn me into a mouse too. And everybody knows once you done been turned into a mouse, where there ain't no going back. Well, Jack, being the kind person he is, he says, well, anything I can do to help? Cat says, well, maybe if you could sit on the porch tonight, because that witch is going to send all kinds of animals here tonight. And if in one of them animals gets in the house, she's going to witch me into a mouse. Jack says, I think I can help you with that. So he goes out to the barn. Sure enough, over there in the corner, he finds a club. He gets this, big, heavy club. Jack's strong. He gets that club and he starts looking around and he says, I got them flying things that's going to be coming too, so I got to get ready for some of those. So he goes over there, finds something flat, and he fashions that into kind of a big paddle. So Jack goes up to the front porch and he sits right by that front door. And sure enough, when it gets really dark, all kinds of things start coming. I mean, there's bears and porcupines and beavers and bats, and he's swatting at them and beating them, and mountain lions and all kinds of things. And Jack's swatting and beating all night. I mean, all night long this goes on. Well, Jack's exhausted by the morning, as you can imagine. And he's opens his eyes when that sun comes out, and he's expecting to see all kinds of dead animals just littering that front yard and the porch. He looks around, there ain't none of them dead animals there. There's nothing. Jack can't understand it, and then all of a sudden the door opens. Out comes the cat. Cat's a little taller than it was the night before. Not only that, the cat looks a little different. Where most of that fur was, looks like human flesh. Now, the ears, they gone. Looking a little different. He kind of looks like a woman. So she says, Jack, you done real good. You just done great last night. But what you got to do tonight, the witch herself is coming tonight. So you cannot, what you do, she's going to witch me into a mouse and you into a cat. If you let her help you with anything, don't you let her help you with anything. Jack said, I can handle that. So she says, come on in, I'll fix you some breakfast. She fixed him breakfast. And so that night, Jack fixes a big old fire in the fireplace, and it's one of them fireplaces where it's big enough to have a big cooking pot in there. That's where they cooked. They didn't have a stove. Cooked in that big cooking pot. And so Jack makes this big fire, and he's sitting by the fire warming himself, and he takes off a shoe and a sock. Sees that big old hole in the sock. There's a nice little mending basket by the sock. So he gets out his yarn and thread. He's just sewing the hole in that sock when all of a sudden the door opens. Sure enough, it's that witch. Well, she comes in there. She was all hunched over, must have looked 100, 200 years old. She's got a long nose that hangs down like that. She's got all kinds of bony hands. She ain't no bigger than a stick, skinny thing. And she comes over, she says, "Hey, Jack, I see you're mending your sock there. Let me help you. It just don't do for no man to mend a sock. He don't know what he's doing." "I can just do fine, ma'am. I'm taking care of this hole all by myself." So he mends that. He puts his sock back on, puts his shoe back on. Then in a few minutes, he decides he's going to go make himself a little food. Goes over there, gets some meat, puts that in the cooking pot in the fireplace. And he's stirring it in there. "Hey, Jack, let me help you with that. It just don't do for a man to be cooking his own food. Why, that's woman's work. Let me help you with that." "Ma'am, I can take care of this all by myself. I don't need no help." So Jack decides he needs some cornbread. He goes over there to the counter to get some cornbread. Just like that, the witch jumps over there, starts stirring that pot. Jack runs back to the pot. He gets that big meat fork that's hanging by the fireplace. He gets that meat fork and pushes it into the witch, into the fire. Well, the cat and the mouse come out. But she don't look like no cat no more. She's a beautiful woman. And she says, "Jack, I thank you for all you've done for me. I'm going to give you this whole farm." Jack said, "Well, I appreciate it, but I don't want it unless you come with it." She said, "What? You want me to be your wife?" He said, "Yeah, you're the prettiest woman I've ever seen." So the next day, sure enough, they hitch up their buggy, go into town. Jack buys himself some nice clothes, and they go off to town, get married. Well, things going pretty well for Jack. He likes being a rich man and living out there on that nice farm. But after a while, he says to his wife, "Put on your best clothes. We're getting the best buggy." He puts on his suit. And off they go to see Ma and Pa. And he tells her the whole story about Will and Tom on the way there. When they get there, Will and Tom has done come back. They're sitting there. They know it's 1 year exactly, wondering if Jack is a-coming. And so they look around. And all of a sudden they see a carriage coming down the road, yell in the house, "Ma, a rich man's done driving down the road. I don't know, we don't know him." So Ma comes outside. She said, "That's my boy Jack. I'd know Jack anywhere." So they all have a reunion. And Jack says to Will and Tom, "Boys, you treated me bad. Real bad. But I forgive you. And Ma and Pa, you're coming with me to live with me at our new house." So they all went off. Well, Will and Tom, they didn't do so well. But the last time I was at Jack's house, there was 5 people sitting up there in the rocking chair. There was Jack, his wife, Ma and Pa sitting up there on that porch. And the 5th rocking chair had the little mouse sister in it.
Please stay tuned. We'll be right back with more local storytelling.
You're out for an evening on the town. Finally a chance to relax and forget that you left your front door completely unlocked. Fortunately, you just installed a security system from Star Communications. With just your cell phone, you can check on your house, lock it down, light it up, and get back to relaxing.
You forgot to put Buster in his crate.
Unfortunately, we can't help with that. Security and automation from Star Communications. Call today to find out more.
If you run a business, you need sales. To get sales, you need customers. To get customers, you need exposure. Let our team of experts craft and produce the perfect video ad to reach your intended audience while making the most of your advertising dollars. Call 1-800-706-6538 or visit starcom.net to contact our Star Communications production team and get your business moving to the next level.
I'm Angelique Young. My maiden name was Jacobs. Grew up right here in Sampson County. I am a member of the Kahari tribe, and I'll be sharing with you some Native American storytelling today. And my connection with Native American storytelling goes way back to school age. Some of you may remember names like Joyce Locklear. Some of you may remember names like Farrell Carter. These women were truly instrumental in my growing up because they were the Indian education coordinators for Sampson County, whether it be Clinton City Schools or with Sampson County Schools. Now, Miss Joyce, she was a character. How many of you knew Miss Joyce Locklear? Okay, character buddy. I mean, she could walk in a room and it would just light up because she was so bubbly. And Miss Carter, she was a little bit more serious in nature, but still just as loving and just as caring as anybody would care to be. And so it's on the shoulders of these women that I continue storytelling. They shared stories with us through arts and crafts. They shared stories with us through Indian Culture Club, things like that as we were going through school. Powwow season is or the Indian festivals that happen here. So they were always telling stories. And as I've grown up and moved away from home, some of those stories, unfortunately, I've forgotten. But one storyteller in my family was with me every single day up until he went to be with the Lord, and that was my daddy. My daddy was an amazing storyteller. And so I'm going to share with you a couple of stories from Native American folklore. And then I'm going to share one story from my dad, and then I'm going to bring my family up because I want you to see how we carry this thing down through generations. Because that's how stories remain alive as we tell our children, and they tell their children, and they tell their children. A long time ago, long before you and I can remember, water covered everything. There was no land, but there were animals that lived in the water. And above the water, there were clouds. And in the middle of the clouds grew a great tree, and it was called the Great Tree. Now, the Great Tree had 4 big roots, and they stretched in the 4 sacred directions. In Scotland, there was a chief, and the chief had a wife. The wife had a dream one night, and she said, I had a dream that the great tree was lying down on its side. She told her husband, the chief, and he said, well, we must make this dream come true. I don't know what it means, but we must make this dream come true. So he gathered some men with him, and they started pushing, and they started pulling on that tree. They shoved, and they tugged, but the men could not move the tree. So the chief said, I'll try. And so he pushed, and he pulled, and he shoved, and he tugged. And then eventually, he uproots the tree and lands it on its side. Well, everyone became so curious because this left a great big hole in the clouds. And so everyone looked down through the clouds, and they saw the water covered everything, and they saw the animals that lived in the water. Well, the chief's wife, she was very curious. And so she grabbed onto one of the roots and she leaned in just a little bit further, and guess what happened? She fell through. But just before she did, she grabbed some seeds that were attached to the roots. So the animals looked up and they saw the chief's wife falling from the sky, and 2 swans flew up to catch her. Well, that was good and fine. It saved her life. But then they questioned, where are we going to put her? There's nothing here. She can't swim. Where are we going to put her? And so the animals started talking, and they said, we've heard that there's dirt beneath the water. Maybe someone should go and try to get some. So the duck, the loon, and the beaver all tried. Each one tried, and each one failed. Then there was a tiny little muskrat, and she said, I'll try, for she was great in courage, though small in size. And so the muskrat, she dove, and she swam, and she kicked her little legs, and her chest felt like it was going to just implode, and she thought her lungs would break. And just as she couldn't fight anymore, she felt the bottom of the water, and there was land. Her lifeless body drifted up to the surface, and just as it did, a turtle came by. And he saw the tiny little muskrat, and the muskrat put the dirt on the back of the turtle. Just then the turtle's back began to grow, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it was finally big enough so the swans could land the chief's wife on the back of the turtle. And when the chief's wife was able to stand up, she dropped the seeds, and immediately grass began to grow, and trees began to grow. And that is how the earth came to be as it is today. In Native American storytelling, there's usually 2 things that happen. One, there's always a lesson learned. And a lot of times they'll even answer questions for us. And so in this little fable, you can be tiny, but you can be mighty. And also, the earth is called the Great Turtle. And so it kind of incorporated both of those things together. And so here's another little story about an eagle and a turtle. Long, long ago, the turtle the turtle's back did not always look as it does right now. The muddy and the fragmented back or shell of the turtle. When the Creator created the turtle, he created the turtle's back shiny, and it was smooth. And so Mr. Turtle and Mr. Eagle were very best friends. And one day, Mr. Eagle was flying about, and Mr. Turtle was walking around, and he said, Mr. Eagle, I want to be like you. I want to fly. I am tired of my short little legs. I'm the slowest thing in the forest. I want to fly, and because you are my very best friend, you're going to teach me. And he said, Mr. Turtle, don't be silly. If the Creator wanted you to fly, he would have given you wings. Don't be ashamed of who you are. Be proud of who you are. You were not created to fly. So no, I'm not going to teach you how to fly. And honestly, even if I could teach you, I couldn't because I don't know how. And he said, but you are my very best friend. You have to teach me how to fly. He said, no, Mr. Turtle, I can't teach you how to fly. So Mr. Turtle was angry, and he was frustrated. So he puffed, and he huffed, and he went back home. And Miss Turtle, being the wife that she was, she recognized that her husband was frustrated. She said, husband, what is wrong with you? Why are you so frustrated? He said, I want to fly. And Mr. Eagle would not teach me how to fly, even though he is my very best friend. I'd have no idea why he wouldn't teach me, but he gets to fly up. He gets to be near the Creator. He gets to see all the things that the Creator has made, and he would not even help me. Oh, husband, we were not created to fly. We were created to crawl. He said, but we have the shortest legs in the forest, and we're so slow. I'm tired of being the slowest thing on the ground. I want to fly. And you know what? You're my wife. So you're going to help me. You're going to help me learn how to fly. And so, as good wives do, knowing it's not going to turn out well, she said, "Okay, I'll help you learn how to fly." So Mr. Turtle went and gathered some mud. He gathered all this mud, and he gathered some vines together, and he created this little sack, a cocoon type thing, and he connected it to the vines, and he basically made himself a slingshot. You know where this is headed, don't you? All right. And so even though Mr. Turtle was frustrated with Mr. Eagle knew that they would meet again the next morning just like they've always done. And to be sure, the next morning, Mr. Eagle comes flying over the horizon, and Miss Turtle, she is getting ready to help him, and she trips and falls over the vine. This disconnected the slingshot, and here comes Mr. Turtle. So Mr. Eagle is flying and is not expecting anything to meet him in the sky, and so all of a sudden he sees this thing catapulted across the sky, and then he realizes, that is my friend, Mr. Turtle. So Mr. Turtle lands on his back, and it fragments his back. And he lands and he glides and he says, "Mr. Turtle, what are you doing?" He said, "I wanted to learn how to fly." He said, "And how did that work out for you?" He said, "Not so well." And so Mr. Eagle, being the good friend that he is, he helps Mr. Turtle back on his feet. And he said, "Mr. Turtle, your shell." He said, "What is it with my shell?" He said, "It's not shiny and smooth anymore. It's fragmented. It's the color of mud. What did you do to your shell?" So he looks back as far as he can and he says, "I guess I wasn't created to fly." He said, "But I wanted to be like you. I wanted to fly. I wanted to be close to the Creator. You can see everything that He's made." And he said, "Mr. Turtle, you get to walk so close to Mother Earth. You get to hear her heartbeat. I can't do that. I'm too far away. You are perfect just the way you are. Mr. Turtle, be thankful. We were all created to be just the way we are." Okay, so the next one has to do with my dad. Now, my dad was Gurry Jacobs. He had a heating and air conditioning business here in town for years. He also worked out in Fayetteville some, and stories that he told us, everything was a story. He would tell all kinds of fables and tales. Some of them were possibly made up, some that he learned when he was a child. But this particular story, the story or the tale that he told us is that he was supposed to have an oral presentation at school. Now, he went to the East Carolina Indian School that Justin was speaking of earlier. So that's where he went to high school up until his senior year, I think it was. But that's where he went to high school. And the assignment was to have an oral presentation due the next day. Well, for whatever reason, my daddy either forgot about the assignment or just was not prepared. We will never know. But he did show up with a story. And since then, we found out this was not an original. He did not make this up, but I thought it was pretty neat that he shared it with us. You see, Jimmy had a nickel, and he also had a girl. His sweetheart's name was Fanny Brown, and she was Jimmy's pearl. Now, Jimmy had a friend, Samuel Brown's my name, and soon Samuel taught Jimmy how to play a certain game. Now, Samuel had a pair of dice, and he could make them talk. So Jimmy sold his nickel, and he took a little walk. And so Fanny heard how Jimmy broke her gem, and since she was such a nice girl, she said, I am through with him. And soon Jimmy's father heard the news, and sent poor Jim to bed. And slowly as he went upstairs, his father to him said, "Now, son, I must try and teach you a good lesson. And tomorrow with you over my knee, I'll make a good impression." So Jimmy slowly went upstairs, and down on bended knee, he looked his face up to the Lord and offered up his plea. He said, "Lord, bless Mom and Pa, and take good care of Granny. And Lord, tomorrow, above all else, please take real good care of Fanny." So the moral of this story is there seems to be too many. Don't gamble away your nickel, or you could lose your nickel and your fanny. And also, my daddy was very musically inclined, and he would share little songs with us. And these are songs that I've shared with my children, and now that I have a sweet little grandson, we'll be sharing that with him. And so, if it's okay, I'd like to invite my family up. And this is what I found since. It's called the Donut Song. Do any of you remember the Donut Song? Okay, apparently it is like way on back there. And so this is something that has been in our family for at least 3 generations. And so I'm hoping with this little fella, it'll make it at least 4. Well, I went down to Clinton and I walked around the block. I walked right into the bakery shop. I picked 3 donuts out of the grease and I handed the lady my 5-cent piece. First she looked at the nickel, then she looked at me. She said, "This nickel is no good to me. There's a hole in the nickel and it's all the way through." Well, I said, "There's a hole in your donut too." Yeah, I said, "There's a hole in your donut too."
Thank you for watching today's presentation of Local Storytelling, brought to you by Graves Memorial Presbyterian Church. Be sure to tune in next time for another episode of the Community Storytelling Festival.